Welcome, Commissioners. We are back live, yay, to this Clackamas County Board of Commissioners policy session on March 16th, 2022. Gary, County Administrator, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Your first session today, Commissioners, is Economic Development Dues and Memberships and the Economic Development Lottery Funds Overview. We have from Business and Community Services, Sarah Ekman, Interim Director, and Cindy Moore, Economic Development Specialist. You do have one decision point today, and that is the Clackamas County Business Alliance dues, but the rest is an informational update for you. So Cindy and Sarah, you have 15 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, and good morning. Yes, we're here as a follow-up to a January session we had with you, and brought quite a bit of information in your packet, both about dues and memberships. These are paid for, they're all economic development related. They're paid for either through BCS or Public and Government Affairs. And the Public and Government Affairs piece is limited to the Chambers of Commerce. The rest come through BCS, through economic development, and our lottery dollars. So Cindy's going to walk us through those, and then I'm going to share a little bit of more information on the Clackamas County Business Alliance once she does that.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners, and Administrator Smith. Cindy Moore with Business and Community Services. To expand on what Sarah did with her opening comments in your packet, we have prepared a spreadsheet for your review in our conversation today.
So I don't have a copy.
We did bring hard copies if you'd like.
Yes, I would like a copy. Oh, yeah, if I can get a copy too.
That's
that'd
much
be great.
easier to read, thank you.
Yeah,
Sure.
I know. I could do it electronically, but I can't.
I'll be the runner. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There you go.
Right.
You got yours?
While Cindy's
Yeah.
delivering them, I'll,
Yeah, thank you.
here, Chair Smith.
Should you like
Thank you very much.
While Cindy's coming back, I'll just give you a little bit of an overview. The first one with the blue and the green is dues and memberships, and she'll talk about each of those.
All right. So as mentioned, we prepared a spreadsheet here for your consideration. We have sorted the dues and memberships by annual dues. So at the top, you'll see, starts out with the Clackamas County Business Alliance. We'll get into a conversation later about that. And then it goes through each of the either professional organizations that we support or business and industry organizations that we support as well. And as Sarah mentioned, all of the organizations that we have on this list have some annex into economic development and support what we're looking to do in Clackamas County in partnership with our cities. So you'll see, like I mentioned, there's not only the Chambers of Commerce, but our specific industry associations and professional development as well. And so in addition to the dues and memberships, at your request, we included information on the lottery economic development projects that we have funded over the years to give you a flavor of the, not only the breadth of types of projects that come our way. We field requests quite often for support from our community partners, and wanted to make sure that you had a clear view of what has been funded in the past and what we're projecting to do for this fiscal year. Yes, thank you. Also included in the policy session worksheet was reference to the state statute. If there's questions around what part of the statute these lottery dollars could be invested in, and these areas support furthering economic development includes, but is not limited to, services or financial assistance for-profit and nonprofit businesses located or to be located in Oregon, services or financial assistance to business and industry associations to promote, expand, or prevent the decline of their business. And then also services and financial assistance for facilities, physical environments, or development projects as defined by statute. And there is a link in the policy session worksheet as well, and we can expand on that should you choose to have a bigger conversation.
Thank you, Cindy. So that gives you a little bit of an overview of both the dues and memberships and the lottery projects. The third component of our session today was to bring you a bit more information about the Clackamas County Business Alliance, and both what has been done in the past and then currently what our engagement with them is. So in 2018, there was an agreement between the county and the Ccba to provide $150,000 of additional funding to the association to help them bolster the association, kind of revamp it, if you will. And in your packet, there's a copy of some PowerPoint slides that were provided at that time, and there was quite a bit of work that went into that. After that work was completed, the county transitioned to a regular dues-paying member, and we now pay the dues associated with an organization of our size, which is just taken directly from their dues structure. So we're now regular dues-paying members, which means we attend their meetings, we participate in government affairs sessions, which track legislative activity, and then we have had a staff member in the past on their board, as well as the Board of Commissioners being ex officio members of the CCBA as well. So there's quite a bit of information in here about that, as well as a copy of the strategic plan that was developed using those dollars that the county assisted with earlier on, and they're continuing the work that's outlined in the strategic plan.
One of the other pieces that I'd like to add to on this spreadsheet was we included a column on staff recommendations, and that was to give you some more information about how these investments in these organizations not only supports BCS and economic development, but we also have cross connections with DTD and some other county departments who would then be able to participate in these organizations and benefit more specifically from the professional development side.
Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you for your very enlightening conversation and presentation on this. Commissioners, I would like us, we're not going to make all the decisions today. Obviously, there's one decision before us today. We can take a look at that separately, Commissioner Schrader. But Gary, I want to have a discussion. I know there are staff recommendations here, but I have an idea that I would like to present to commissioners. But I want to get some facts on the table first. Gary, what is the overall contribution from Clackamas County to CCBA over time?
For the 16 years since the Clackamas County Business Alliance was formed, Clackamas County has paid approximately $560,000 over those 16 years in either dues or financial support to the Clackamas County Business Alliance. That is not counting attending forums. I took that money out. This is simply membership dues, or this $150,000 you offered. In 2006, the county also gave a significant contribution to help found the group, but $560,000 over 16 years.
I think that is absolutely remarkable that any one group does that. And Cindy, I was paying very close attention to what you said the CCBA offers us. The county offers that to us as well through PGA. So I do think it's a duplicative service. I do think that we have singled out, not to the benefit of other organizations, this organization with an inordinate amount of imbalance of money. Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, and, you know, the institutional memory here is rather interesting, as you know. This was founded by David Marks back in the day, and I forget the other gentleman who was a very lovely human being who has since passed away.
Herb.
But was largely, you know, the Stafford group. They were very involved in the redevelopment. You know, they wanted to develop Stafford, and they used this as a vehicle to do that, which has always upset the Stafford Hamlet, and that's why we keep seeing information from them. As far as I know, David is not involved anymore. And again, I'm going blank on the other names. And at one point, they were political as well. And I remember them endorsing candidates, which they don't do anymore. But I'm glad they don't do that anymore.
Right.
Because it was not a very happy thing for us to be supportive of them and then have endorsements go on. So that's a good piece. I think it's time, if I could just, I think it's time. I think we should give them the additional $5,000, and then I think we need to call it good.
Okay.
That's what I would suggest at this point.
I will
so.
entertain at a motion for that and get this issue off the table so we can move on to a broader discussion of which I would like to lead. Commissioner Fisher.
So we pay other organizations. We have GPI at $25,000. We got Westside Economic Westside WEA Economic Alliance for $86.50. I think we need to look at overall everything, but I wouldn't want to say let's pay $5,000 and then be done.
Okay.
I mean, because we have lottery dollars for specifically the purpose of facilitating and enhancing the economic strength of our community. And if the Clackamas County Business Alliance is to do what it was set out to do, which if we look back at 2019 and the deliverables, it's all about organizing industry so that we can have strength. And some of the issues, I mean, employment lands, we have a real need for employment lands for businesses to grow and prosper. We have things that are Clackamas County specific, and sometimes we need a strong business voice, not only to help inform us as policymakers, but to carry that message along with us to the legislature. So I would not be in support of just calling it good. I think we have to look at it as an overall comprehensive strategy. But I'm good with supporting the additional 5,000.
Yes. I know that it has morphed to being that, but I think what I'm trying to remind people is it did not start out that way, quite frankly.
There's issues, and, I have a really good idea.
All right, go for
Moving
it.
forward, okay? And I can't wait to talk about, two commissioners have their cards up. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just have a comment, but I first want to ask a clarifying question to Commissioner Schrader, and that is when you mean give them the 5,000 and be done.
With that, in other words, I wouldn't give them any more, I wouldn't fund them to the level we've been funding them from here on out. There are other organizations that I think are far more important to us. And like to Commissioner Fisher's point, I'd rather see money go to the Oregon City Business Alliance at this point, because they've been far more effective with their deliverables. To me, it's a deliverable thing. I think that they have struggled through the years to give us deliverables that were specific, that were the broader deliverables. I don't think they have the same level of success that someplace like the Oregon City Business Alliance does. And the West Side Economic Alliance. They just have never seen, it was a specialist group directly related to developing an area of this county. And we've supported that. So.
Paul, did you want to have a
Yeah,
comment?
so I just wanted to, if the conversation could come after, that's fine. I do want to just say that, with the COVID interruption, that a lot of things are kind of somewhat broken and crippled, right? For everyone. And so I haven't really been connected, but if we're going to be talking about deliverables and talking about each of these in a balanced way, I'm good. So I am good with the 5,000, the next 5,000 for the total of 10. But I will say this, it's compelling for me to look at and say that the next line down, West Side Economic Alliance, is 8650.
Yeah.
Right? So, and that's Washington County. So,
It's regional.
yeah, so, let's have that conversation.
I have an idea.
Commissioner Smith
I
has.
have an idea. I'm trying to stay focused on one area of business at a time. Thank you, commissioners. Commissioner Scholl, your card is up.
Yes, if we don't look at the amount of money paid to CCBA in the past, and we look at the future going forward, do you think that the 10,000 annual dues, do you think the CCBA gives us something back in return to justify that?
I think that was what the report that was submitted by Ccba that gave the deliverables that the
Right.
board at that time was asking for.
In your opinion, and in Sarah's opinion, do you think that the county receives back a dividend, if you will, from those dues?
I would say that there is an absolute value to the Ccba and to all the entities that are
Yeah.
on this list. I would
Okay.
put back that I don't believe that it is on staff for us to be making that recommendation.
But you have
to the
observation
commissioners. I
of
do
what's
have
going on out there
observations.
with your position.
I do see value, absolutely.
And Sarah?
I do as well. I do see value.
Okay.
And with the dues that we're paying, as we mentioned, we're in the structure that's applied across the board for the organization.
Right. One more question. On the CCBA accomplishments and outcomes, July 2019, is that the last report they gave us on that?
I believe that is the case.
Yes, and after that, it transitioned into a different funding structure with us changing how we paid dues.
Okay. All right, thank you.
One clarifying thing, Chair, and that is I want to just say that if we're gonna, we ought to be looking at annually, I gather, the 16 years, the collective amount. And if we're gonna do that metric, then I would say, geez, I don't know how much we put in the GPI at 25,000, but if you took that number and multiplied it times 16 years, you get a far larger number than what
Well,
the
I
CCBA
understand
number is.
that CCBA was set up, and they got a block sum of money of $150,000. I don't know what pot that came from. But I have real mixed feelings about going ahead and paying $5,000 to this particular organization when we're looking at the others so stringently. Now, when were these dues due and payable to CCBA?
June of 2021.
Okay, so I would say that we could move ahead with paying the dues. Commissioners, you feel free to vote no on that, whatever, because we are in arrears of that payment, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Martha, did you make a motion?
I will move that we pay $5,000 for the dues of CCBA.
Oh,
for
$5,000.
this year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Last year.
For last year's
Last
dues. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Schrader has moved that we pay $5,000 to CCBA. Commissioner Fisher has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Shannon, please call the poll.
Commissioner Savis?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Now, I would like to entertain the board with another discussion. Gary, let's talk about lottery dollars for a moment. How much lottery dollars do we get a year for Clackamas County?
Sarah, please help me.
Certainly, it's approximately 2 million.
Okay, 2 million. Now, Gary and I have had discussions that I want to approach the board about. Gary has had an idea, can I say that?
Yes,
I
please.
think you've already said it.
Yep.
That we establish an economic development group that already exists in BCS. We just bring it out as far as structures,
No, that's not public yet, sorry. I apologize. The idea of funding the economic development staff, currently, half of these lottery
Sorry.
dollars are paid with lottery dollars. So the staff of economic development currently, they are paid out of lottery dollars, approximately $1 million. So there's an additional $1 million that's left. But up to this point, I want to be really honest, commissioners, staff has made these decisions. We have not come to you prior on how to spend these lottery
No,
dollars.
we haven't.
Never. Staff has used, using your strategic plan,
Yeah.
staff has helped identify how to spend those lottery
And I
dollars.
apologize, Gary,
It's okay.
for that.
I'm sorry.
So we need to probably set aside $1 million for our economic staff, which means we have $1 million of lottery funds that we can expend on stuff like this. I'm going to ask my commissioners to start thinking about expending those additional $1 million in a different mindset. I think that we should establish this $1 million fund like our small grants program. Every year, new organizations apply for monies. We set goals, we set the amount, we set deliverables, and just because they get the money one year does not necessarily mean they get the money the next year, although they could. I think it should be Clackamas County centric. I think we should support our businesses, nonprofits who maybe do not get some of the other nonprofit money, and bona fide organizations. I want you to consider that because it's an opportunity for Clackamas County to really spread the wealth of $1 million to groups who have not got it. And these groups, frankly, have been at the trough every single year expecting Clackamas County to, and frankly, I am not going to support, I'm going to tell you right now, commissioners, I am not going to support GPI. No way in hell. I am not going to support West Side Economic Alliance. It needs to be Clackamas County, because I don't see Portland coming in and giving Clackamas County money. I don't see Washington County coming in and helping us with our problems over here. We are the third largest, so we need to take care of ourselves, take care of our own people, our own businesses, and our own nonprofits on this. And so I want you to think differently. I want you to bring ideas forth. We are not making decisions today on that, but Gary, what do you think?
Yeah, so Commissioners, and I apologize, Chair Smith, that's what I thought, we had talked about this previously. I actually recommend that's an excellent proposal for you, like the small grants program. You have $1 million of lottery dollars to give to businesses and nonprofits in Clackamas County. Staff can create a criteria and recommendations, what the funds could be spent on, and then people apply every year. You get to make the final decision, and then that could include dues of organizations, but they'd have to apply. And then you get to make the choice like you do with the small grants program. It could be a very unique way and creative way of helping put you back in the driver's seat on how you want to spend these dollars for businesses in Clackamas County.
And we can use maybe some of these goals. For instance, our farming initiative. I would love to have a group out there apply for some seed money, and with the goal of next generation farming, and can we feed ourselves? This would be an excellent use of that money. Now, Gary, on the chart, we have set aside the Chambers of Commerce, and those are general fund dollars. I assume those will be continued to be paid out of general fund.
Yes.
And Commissioners, I am okay with that if you're okay with that. I think our chambers are set-aside organizations that we can continue to support with our general fund dollars, if you think that's okay. But I just think we need to start looking at things differently. You know, we're in a new era. We're coming out of COVID. We've been shut down for 2 years. This is a great opportunity for new ideas and a new approach to old situations.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I just have to say a few things about GPI. Unfortunately, it has the Portland name, okay, associated with it. But it's regional. It's not just about Portland. And I think that they were involved in bringing Amazon to Canby. Is that correct? Yeah. And then also, if I'm not mistaken, we had a cross-laminated timber initiative. I think that the port, through their work with GPI, has a cross-laminated timber facility now for production in Portland. I think it's actually land there, and I don't know if you could check on that for me. The other piece of GPI that is important, Judy, I'm looking at a bigger picture than just.
They can apply like everybody else.
Well, I
Yes.
know, but and I'll address that in a minute. I will, honestly. They are responsible for the whole region for the comprehensive economic development strategy that pulls together the regional framework for getting dollars directly from the Department of Commerce, right? Yeah, from the federal government. So part of the issue is that we have not been able to access as much as that as we would like because we need to be bringing projects forward to them. So that's a piece of it, is that you'll lose that conduit to federal dollars because they are the body that is recognized by the federal government to be the group where all of those things are brought forward for projects. So I just want to clarify, for me, looking at the bigger picture, they were the one thing I would keep because of
But
the
my
broader.
point is, if we give preference to one group, and we already did it today with 5,000 payment, but
Right.
that was in arrears. And I'm very serious about this. If GPI is such a wonderful organization for us, I would think they'd be first in line with a spanking application to say, we have done this for Clackamas County. We want to continue this with Clackamas County. I've been chair how long now?
Just over a year.
Over a year. I've yet to hear a whisper from them. I
Well,
have yet,
that-
you may be involved,
That was on me then, I should be telling you about.
I have yet
Things
to
like
hear
that.
anything. This is an opportunity for them to come to us and make a case that we should be giving them $25,000 cash of our very precious lottery funds. And if, like you say, they brought a facility to Canby, if they did this, then they can come forward and give us the list of all the goodies that they've given us, and with a proposal to do more for us. That's what I'm trying to generate in Clackamas County.
I understand, so what I would like to suggest is that I bring this to them and say.
I can't hear you.
I said I would suggest that we bring this to them, and I can explain how we're
Go ahead,
managing
explain
this.
to them, but I
Okay.
do think that commissioners should look
Right.
at this
Okay.
in a whole different light.
So,
And the thing is, just because I'm not a big fan of GPI, doesn't mean that the other commissioners aren't. We all will have our preferences.
yes. The other thing I might want to add, though, is just with this overall, what these are, they're not, you're kind of, they're kind of professional organizations in the economic development landscape, which is why they have a dues structure. So I don't think any of these organizations here are going to come, they're not going to apply for anything. And I can see things that we need to drop, like the Oregon Bioscience Association. For example, we were working with them on projects in Milwaukee at the time, remember that? And we were working with OHSU to try and pull together a bioscience center in that area. We no longer have the bandwidth for that kind of work.
No.
Okay, so that's been part of it, is our bandwidth has been reduced. The International Economic Development Council, we had an international development body of work that we were doing. We actually, because of our work, enabled the ag community to export frozen strawberries to China. I don't know if you're aware of that, but we had pulled out the federal guys. We had a big meeting, and because we had that large meeting, now our berry growers are able to, so there are bigger things that kind of happen. with
Okay,
some
on
of
the
this.
sheet, Martha, you
Yeah.
will see that staff has recommended that we cancel some organizations.
yes.
And we can continue. I think as a group that we need to evaluate whether we want to continue and/or cancel some of these.
Yes, I agree with you.
And-
I see things here that I think we should cancel the Pacific
And
Northwest Defense Coalition.
How are
for
these dues paid? I assume they send us an invoice, and within that invoice, an application, I think should accompany it, saying we apply for our, it's just a way of accountability and transparency that I want this board to review every year, because these lottery dollars are very important, and we get those for economic development. And I want to see how, for instance, some of these organizations are spurring economic development in this
I
county.
think that's all legitimate, yeah.
And I do think
that- right.
everybody should apply. And it may be that GPI gets $25,000 a year out of the million. I don't know, but I do say they have to make their case.
Yeah, but here's my question then. Does it have to be like a formal, here's what I'm trying to say. We should be evaluating with our economic development folks, you're right, all of these organizations, whether or not we're going to be members of it or not. Do we want to have an application? Do we want to have it the way we do nonprofits?
Yes.
Or do we want to evaluate based on what our alignment is with our economic development sectors and pick and choose?
Well, Martha,
what
if
might
they
be
don't make an
workable?
application and put something in writing, how are we going to evaluate based on somebody's memory? No, I don't think
No,
that
we've
is a
got-
good way.
we've-
I do think it
Yeah.
needs to be in writing and not so loosey-goosey.
We have to look at, I know, and here's what the difference I'm trying to make is the nonprofits usually go out for grants all the time. Professional organizations give you reports every year, and we should be looking at those reports. We're no longer looking at the Milwaukee stuff, so there's no point in being a member of the OBA. PNDC, for example, we incubated that here, it grew here. They are very successful on their own. They don't need our money anymore, okay? All right? You see what I'm saying? I mean, they were able to grow and do all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, we don't need to be giving them $25,000 just because we started them here. So I'm wondering if we could have a bigger, here's just my suggestion, Chair, and I don't think it's too far off base from what you really want to do. I think with a lot of these, we need to be looking at their annual reports. We ought to see what we're working on in economic development and align what our professional organizations with what we've been working on in economic development. I think that's a good way to go. So it's not like a grant process as much as it's us working with you guys, aligning with what we want to do, like the farm stuff, okay? Maybe we should be giving dues to Farm Bureau at this point. Maybe we should
Farm
be giving.
Bureau is not going to do food production in Clackamas County.
Okay,
I can tell you that right now.
but we should be looking for those organizations, reviewing their annual reports, seeing if they're worthwhile, and if it's aligning with what we want to have happen.
Okay,
Okay.
we have two other commissioners with cards.
Okay, and I won't say anything else.
Well, no, you can, but
It's okay.
I want to get to my other commissioners.
Yeah, okay.
I think Commissioner Savas, you are next.
Yeah. So I think that we could break this down into maybe a list of what we would like to see or agree on for ongoing, and then the other ones that are maybe, fit more of the category you're speaking to, Commissioner Smith, that'd be better. And I'm going to say that the chambers and business alliances, I would put in the ongoing for this particular
Okay.
reason, that there are intangible benefits to that. And sometimes it's not about what we see or how we benefit, but maybe how the businesses benefit. I think the value of networking, the value of relationships are intangible, but they become evident when they become evident. So I would, like to put some of these in that category where I really think that there is a place for a new business to say, geez, I'm going to go to my local chamber of commerce, I'm going to meet people, I might meet a banker, I might meet customers might find me. They can't measure that. So to apply, I'm just thinking how, what would we ask and gauge that? And I would always like to keep politics out of things, of course, but I think growing someone's membership, if there's a chamber of commerce, there is no chamber of commerce with one member. But if you have a chamber of commerce with one member, well, maybe we should reconsider giving them a
Of
whole
course,
lot of money.
I did say that chambers would be outside of this, that our
Okay,
chamber
good.
membership dues are being paid out of the general fund. And I would prefer to continue with that.
Right, but the I did want to just add to that is the business alliances, what I've always thought, and I think when Chair Bernard took on that project with Ccba for $150,000 and that great thing, and Administrator Krupp was in charge at that time, or here at the time, the essence of that was that they were going to be able to get their membership grown and expand. And ideally, my personal goal, mine apparently, maybe others had that too, I don't know, was that the business alliances merge into one, like Westside Economic Alliance. They become one Clackamas County Economic Alliance, and be greater. But there's some of the business alliances that look more like chambers of commerce, okay, where they're dealing with micro businesses, and there's some business alliances that deal with the big players. And Westside Economic Alliance tends to be less like a chamber of commerce and more like a business alliance versus, let's say, I haven't been there, the Happy Valley Business Alliance. Great bunch of people, very active, lots of energy. I'm sure they're not even on the list, right?
No.
But there's an example of a well-running networking kind of a thing that is more like a chamber, but it's localized into Happy Valley.
And that's what I really like to
Right.
see.
You would
For
like-
instance, on this list, business recovery centers get $300,000 a year. I think that's probably in alignment with
Yes.
our goals, but I don't know what that means. Who are they? I assume it's a group of different organizations.
Chambers, right?
Okay, is that not lottery funds, but is that ARPA recovery funds, COVID funds for that? I don't know.
The business recovery centers have been funded to 7 chambers of commerce using a combination of CARES dollars and lottery dollars.
Care centers,
CARES dollars
CARES dollars.
and
got it.
lottery dollars, and they're providing resources to businesses. It was during COVID and now kind of COVID recovery.
Okay.
So they're connecting them with
So I
resources.
think that we need to outline that, and we need to say exactly what that is, because you have to understand, as commissioners, we're dealing with about 1,000 different issues, and I'm trying to get us to
Yeah.
focus on where the money is going, not just with lottery daughters people, with everything we're spending money on. And, Paul makes a great point, that Happy Valley group is not on here, and maybe they have a little project they'd like to engage in. They have a track record of success, they have a track record of energy and good membership, and maybe there's something over there they can't quite get to, and they could use $5,000 or $10,000 to incubate a project they have. That's what I'm thinking about for Clackamas County. Mr. Scholl.
I like the idea of determining our dues based on the productivity of the organization to produce something for the county. And so if dues are paid on a calendar year basis, does BCS have the ability in December to look at those organizations that we've given dues to in the previous year, to look at their productivity in helping Clackamas County achieve Performance Clackamas, and then make a recommendation to the board, 1st of January, for example, on those organizations you recommend we continue dues with, and then, once those are approved, we go out to those organizations for application for dues, to receive dues for the next year. Do you have the ability in BCS to do that?
We do. In terms of the cycle, it varies. Some are on a fiscal year, some are on a calendar year, so we would have to, take a slice in time, and we could certainly do that. And then our organizations that we're members of do have, annual reports and those kinds of documents that they do share with us, and so we can pull together a recommendation for what would be kind of ongoing dues and memberships and bring that to you in that January timeframe, and, have those deliverables and the ability to highlight what the organization has brought to the county in the past year.
Okay, good. If we did that, it would seem to me that those organizations receiving dues would be thinking, hey, I need to be productive if I'm going to get dues paid by Clackamas County again for the next year. All right, thanks.
I might just add also that there's a proactive way we could look at this if we're setting up a new structure, and that we could, when we are talking to these organizations, say that if you are interested in going after these funds, whatever programmatic way we set it up, we could share that in advance so that they know leading into that year what the deliverables are expected at the end. And they can be general, and we can talk about how we want to do that, but that might be helpful to the organizations too, to set them up for success in delivering their reports to the county.
That's a good idea.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, thank you. Good conversation. So we do have an Economic Development Commission which advises us, the BCC, and it would be, in my mind, a very good conversation to have with them, to say, what would you recommend about how we move forward? I can see validity in all of it, of having memberships, because we're the ones actually that get a lot out of those memberships. It's not like those organizations are there to serve Clackamas County. We are able to engage with them, and especially as a government, we need to be responsive to the community, and that's where we get the information. I just think of during the pandemic, on Friday mornings at 8 o'clock, the North Clackamas Chamber, they got together. I was on those calls just listening, how's it going? Really getting a pulse of what's happening. We need them. We need that information. But that's a value that I have. I think Economic Development Commission can help us potentially, or just like if we do look at what we want, we should do a little bit of a community engagement process and figure out, get some input on that. As far as GPI, they do a lot for Clackamas County. The Canby, Amazon, I'm just looking at their website here, was facilitated, and then there was a bioscience in Wilsonville that was facilitated. I've had the, going to those events, it's one of my first in-person events was at the GPI breakfast, and really learning. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I'm texting Cindy. It's like, what did we have to do with this? And so we are engaged. Our economic development is engaged with GPI. And I tell you, we are going to be looking at potentially changing land use laws out of this next legislative session. We, as a commission, are going to be weighing in on that. We need the input of our business partners as to what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, because we are influencers. These relationships matter to us in being effective. It's not that they are here to necessarily serve us. We need them to be effective.
Okay, so I've heard from all the commissioners. I think, Cindy, you have a very good idea. One-page memberships, value to those. We can look at those separately. But I do think we need to take the remaining $1 million of the lottery funds and set it aside for an application process like our small grants, and we can determine what that is. But I would like staff and Gary to go forward in implementing maybe a new way we do this. What do you think about that? And we all can vote on what we want to do. I am not saying I'm not going to diss anything at. Sure. But we need to look at this differently. I think, rubber stamping the same amount of money going out the door, I just do not think is productive. I really don't. I don't want to continue on the same practices because I do think we're entering a new economic era, and you have heard me talk about that a lot in this last month.
So just to think, do we want to engage the Economic Development Commission or the community in doing this?
Gary?
When was the last time you did that?
So I go to those meetings quite
go
often,
pretty regularly.
and they're trying to usually work on their agenda that they have set for the year. If it can be done, Cindy, look at you a little bit, if it can be done as a quick ask or review, or maybe even a questionnaire that can be submitted to them for their input, doesn't even take meeting time, that might be as far as their ideas to get input. But I would also be open to, frankly, a staff, grading of these every year annually to say, we rank this high or low and here's why, and justify it as a review for us. That would really save us a lot of time because they have the time and the energy and the insight to do that. But at least we could review and see why they ranked it high and why they didn't rank it high, and then help us make that decision.
I like that idea of the ranking and the grading. I really do.
I think that's good.
Well, maybe one of their jobs should be is actually looking at the annual reports of some of these organizations and helping us decide
Yeah.
where we're putting our,
And then it takes
That's
really,
something
and it
tangible.
takes the politics out of it. It takes personal preference out of it because I talk to this person all the time and therefore I've developed a relationship with this, which is value. There is value in all of this. I understand that. But I do think it needs to be, we need more measurables on that. Gary, you have.
Yes, how about, can me and Sarah and her team work on what this all could look like, and we'll bring it back to you. The main point is, Commissioners, I think you need to decide how to spend lottery dollars.
that's true.
No disrespect, not staff. You decide exactly how to spend that extra million. So let us come up with a proposal of what that could look like, and may we do that, please, so. come
Is
back to
that
you with
okay,
proposals.
Commissioners?
Yeah, one other little point, along with all of this, there are other things in Clackamas County that somebody had as a good idea a long time ago, and it just keeps me on, and it's not looked at. So there are other areas that exist. There is one, which is the Clackamas County Arts Alliance. Arts is an economic driver. Any dollar invested in the arts creates a multiplier of economic activity. There's a lot of work on this at the national level. It boggles my mind that it's not part of this conversation, that it's just separate.
What, aren't they funded elsewhere?
We
They're
fund them
funded
through
from
the general fund.
But
General
it
fund.
could be, it would be good to have that conversation. Is this appropriate for lottery dollars? Because it is an economic driver, and that's what lottery dollars are for. So just a thought,
$200,000.
just to.
They
put
get
that on the table.
$200,000 out of our general fund.
Might be.
With the regional arts and RACC and the Arts Alliance and RACC, it's approximately
And it
$200,000 a year.
was a general fund, but it was always done under the umbrella of tourism.
Used to be, now it's under county administration.
Now it's under you guys, yeah, I remember.
And we do
that.
historical preservation through lottery, which I totally think is an economic driver, absolutely.
Actually, we really don't do that anymore. Oh.
Well, it's one of our
on here.
groups on here, yeah.
Which one, where is it? Show me where.
It is on the second sheet, I think. Martha.
National Trust Historic Preservation.
Oh, the Main Street, see, again, that was dues because we were a member of Main Street and we had a staff person who went to every small community, okay?
When Jamie Jonk was here.
When J.V. Jonk was here, so that's why we remember. The problem is, we haven't looked at this.
Yeah.
To say, is it still, is it still real to do that? Because she would go out to every small community, and we were doing, and that gets to Tootie's point, that what we were doing was local and small, but we were doing it under the umbrella of the Main Street program, because that's what these small communities are. They're all main streets, they're all the smaller businesses, they're all, GPI is traded sector stuff, big stuff. How do you get Amazon, how do you get the bioscience stuff? So it's different It's different levels. And you're right, we haven't evaluated this, and I do think, we got to evaluate it. We've got to see where we want to focus. And whether it's a grant program or whatever, I think we need to be tasking, or I like the idea of tasking the Economic Development Commission with looking at some of this, reevaluating our sectors, because we haven't done that in a while either. I mean, they did go out and do a sector analysis, and then seeing, like I said, the farm stuff. I mean, where is there a professional organization? We worked with the community college, for example, and extension. The community college actually started a farm-to-table program.
Well, we have quite a large contribution to Clackamas Community College here.
Yeah.
As we do
Horticulture,
Oregon Institute of Technology, as we do to Lewis and Clark College. They claim to have programs to Clackamas County. I want to know exactly, precisely what they are and what the value by a dollar amount is. Right? Paul, your hand is up.
Yeah, it occurs to me from the discussion here that maybe it could even be broken down in a couple categories. And for example, when we talk
Well, it
about
follows
the chambers
boxes
and we
anyway.
talk about the business alliances, we're really talking about networking, assistance, things that help build themselves. And then, the idea of investing or incentivizing or spurring economic activity is more something separate, something different. It's almost like if you're going to invest your own money into a industry for stocks or whatnot. So it seemed like it's a different category, and I would say that to keep the conversation or the metrics in those, look at those, if you want to expand that into how you stimulate an activity or a certain industry or a sector, that's something different. So maybe we could break it down into a couple categories.
I like it.
Okay.
We'll come back to you with proposals, Commissioners, but so for now, Sarah, no more money spent from this account until the board has reviewed it. Includes dues. We'll talk offline about that.
Talk to Gary about that.
We'll talk to you, Gary.
Did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, for the Economic Development Commission, we definitely are very willing to take that to them for their input. We've been working hard to ensure that that advisory capacity to all of you is very intact and that feedback mechanism is there. And so I think this would be a good opportunity for them to weigh in some fashion and provide some recommendation.
It would be a task that they need to do as an advisory board.
A task that was what, Martha?
See the alignment. Pardon me? I said it is a good task for them as business people to be
Right.
able to advise us on this. That's what they were set up for. They've done it in the past.
And
Let's
if
just
they don't have any
test them with
knowledge,
this.
I hope they're honest enough to say, I don't have any knowledge of ABC program. That is a value to me, too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have knowledge. Chair Smith does not have knowledge of all these programs. I want to know what that knowledge is before we
Right.
continue. And I loved this conversation today. I loved this conversation and the ideas that have come forth in moving forward with this. Gary?
Okay, thank you. So the takeaways, Commissioners, you have authorized us to pay the remaining $5,000 for the Clackamas County Business Alliance dues for last year, 2021. So Sarah, if your staff will please finalize that. Staff is going to come up with a proposal of how to have a criteria/process to spend the lottery dollars, and we'll come back to you with those recommendations, including engaging the Economic Development Commission. So we'll come back to you with what that could look like. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cindy and Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, our next
Thank
policy
you.
session, Commissioners, is proposed climate-friendly and equitable communities rules. We have our Transportation Development Team who will present. We'll pause just a moment for the transition here.
While that's happening, I just want to point out something on the website, and that's why I've been confused. On the website, it says that the lottery dollar discussion we just had would go from 10 to 10:30, and the packet says 1 hour. And then under climate-friendly equitable, it says 10:30 to 11:30.
At but 1 hour.
So in the overlap, so there's a half-hour overlap. So just want to say that when I read the packet last night,
I noticed that too,
I
Paul,
thought
but-
we would have a half-hour discussion on what we just discussed and not a 1 hour discussion. No worries, it's all good.
It was about 50 minutes.
But that they're both listed at 1 hour in an hour and a half time frame.
I know.
And I have at 11:30.
Okay,
I'm chairing a meeting at 11:30.
okay, in your office or do you have to travel?
Yeah. Yeah, in my office.
Okay.
Yep.
I suspect the next won't go as long, but I don't know.
These are both meant to be 30 minutes, but you guide how long it goes, commissioners. Our staff did their jobs by limiting their comments to 15 minutes. So next, proposed climate-friendly and equitable communities rules, transportation development. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. Jennifer Hughes, Planning Director. Karen Burig, Long-Range Planning Manager. You have 15 minutes. Go, please.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners. I'm going to lead this discussion off and hand it over to the people who actually know more about this, Jennifer and Karen, who I have a pleasure to be enjoying with today. But a couple of statements. One, although the packet was small, this topic is complicated. I'm going to say that. Secondly, I'm going to say we are going to be honest with you. We don't fully understand all of the 136 pages of this rulemaking packet, and we aren't alone. The region doesn't understand this. What we do know, a couple things. One, this will require amendments to our land use code that are currently not in our work program. Number two, this work is unfunded and is mandated. Number three, some of these requirements aren't generally consistent with comments we have heard from the board during other discussions. I'll talk about, just an example would be parking, okay? I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer to do this high-level summary. This is not going to be a deep dive unless you have specific questions, which we will try our best to answer. But in short, our goal today is to get your direction to send a letter to DLCD to be included in the public hearing packet, okay? With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer, and then I'll do a wrap-up at the end.
Thanks, Dan. So yes, I'm Jennifer Hughes, the Planning Director. And I'm going to start just with a little bit of background. So how did we get here? As I'm sure you're all aware, the governor issued an executive order directing state agencies to do what they could within their existing authority to address climate change. So one of the agencies that is subject to that order is the Department of Land Conservation and Development, which of course is the agency that the Planning and Zoning Program works most closely with. They embarked on a rulemaking process, and they are calling that the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities rulemaking process. Karen has been our sort of liaison, if you want to call it. We don't have anybody actually on the committee, but she's been following that process. So in terms of who knows the most, despite what Dan said, it's really not me, it's really Karen. I did, however, make it through all 136 pages, maybe not every word, but most of them, and I finished, this morning. So the rules were just filed with the Secretary of State about 2 weeks ago, and DLCD is having their first hearing at the end of March. So although there have been drafts and discussions going on, it really was a fairly short period of time to understand, try to understand the scope of the rules. We have come to you twice, just with kind of updates. We were here in September, and as a result of that, you did authorize a letter to LCDC at that time requesting that they provide additional time for the rulemaking process, because there was a feeling, not just at at Clackamas County, but other jurisdictions as well, that the process was going too quickly. They did build a little more time into the process as a result of the testimony that was received. We still don't think it was enough, but we were back in February at issues, and at that point you did direct us to come back for this full policy session so we could talk to you a little bit more about the rules and assess whether there was interest on the board in submitting a formal letter of testimony. The schedule that LCDC is under, they're having their first hearing at the end of March. And so the letter really needs to get in as soon as possible because we want them to have a chance to review it before this is sort of a foregone conclusion. They will then have a second hearing at the end of May. But generally what happens is they provide the direction to their staff kind of at that first hearing, and it's been kind of our experience that after that, it's sort of the train is moving down the tracks, and what ends up happening at that second hearing is often what was signaled at the first one. So we think getting testimony in sooner rather than later would be best. The background a little bit in terms of the scope of this rulemaking is that it applies to 8 metropolitan areas across the state. So it's not every single jurisdiction, but it's any of them that have any size whatsoever. And of course, the Portland metropolitan region is one of those 8, which is why it applies to us. So we are talking about rules that apply, as near as I can tell, within the Portland metropolitan urban growth boundary for us. I do think we're clear on that. It's not the entire county, but it's within the Metro UGB. And there is also a sense, and I'm going to say a sense, I think Karen would say that it's been clear in terms of the discussions at DLCD that the rules will be implemented somewhat differently in the Portland metro region than in the other 7 regions because of the role of metro. Because we have that layer, that additional layer, and a lot of what we do in terms of land use and transportation is regionally coordinated, so that there will be some difference in the way the rules work here. I think, having read the rules and not having been part of the discussion, that that's not entirely clear. It's clear they're trying to do that, but it's not really clear how it plays out exactly, which is one of the questions that we have and that we think more clarification is needed. So that's the background. So what do the rules do? And I'm going to say right up front, if you haven't already gotten the hint, I am telling you generally what the rules will do. Specifically, I can't begin to tell you exactly what they will do. In general terms, we've identified kind of 4 key things. Number 1, they will change the way that the county prioritizes capital transportation projects. So that's, right, sounds really technical, but we decide what we build. We have a plan in our comp plan that says these are the transportation improvements the county's going to construct. And, we never have enough money to do all of them, but we have a list that speaks to those priorities. It's clear these rules are intended to change how things are prioritized. So more emphasis on bike, ped, and transit, less emphasis on roadways. Not no emphasis on roadways, but less emphasis on roadways, okay? So that's number 1. Number 2, it will change the way we analyze our system and our transportation system in terms of how it performs. So we're used to thinking about how congested are the roads, right? How long does it take to get somewhere on the roadways? The idea here is to look at our system in a different way. What DLCD's specific statement in the little press release thing I just got said, the rules will limit the use of congestion measures in transportation planning. And I think it's clear from the rules that's the intent. I'm still not really convinced the rules exactly do that, but that's what they're intending to do. So it's we would be evaluating our system for more than just roadway congestion. So it's something about maybe connectivity, or Karen can speak to some of those details if you have questions. But it's not really clear how that's going to work in practice after I've read through the rules exactly. Thirdly, it will require amendments to the zoning code. There's no question about that. And the biggest ones are about parking, which I'll talk about in a second, but there are some other things related to the way development is designed. Most of those rules seem to focus on what they're calling climate-friendly areas, which are, we've called them other things over the years, but it's the idea of places where you have more mixed-use development, more transit, more density. So for us, probably the Clackamas Regional Center will be our climate-friendly area. That's what we believe to be the case. Again, I don't think the rules are completely clear about that. But within that area, then there will be certain requirements that we have for how development is designed. And then fourthly, parking. So this is another area where the zoning code would need to be amended, but this is kind of a big deal. The rules give us 2 options, and again, this is within the Portland Metro UGB. One is to eliminate all parking minimums. Okay, I'm going to say that again. All parking minimums within the UGB. Okay, that's the easy path. And candidly, that might be the only one we can afford. The alternative is a suite of options that manage parking. Part of it is still reducing or eliminating mandatory parking minimums for some uses, but beyond that, it's things like pricing parking. So a parking permit program, some sort of ability to pay at the curb, requiring developers to lease parking spaces separately from the dwelling units or the commercial space. I don't know how we would enforce that. So as you can, hear, right, these are new programs that we don't have money for. So That's kind of the key. And then the other piece about the parking is not only does it not allow us to require parking, but it actually caps the amount of parking that we are allowed to build. So in certain locations. And that's a little more limited. It's not the whole UGB, but there would be parking maximums for at least this climate-friendly area. Again, we think that's the Clackamas Regional Center, along priority transit corridors, which I'm going to assume are 82nd and McLaughlin, but I haven't actually seen the list, near rail stops. So you'd have maximums and no minimums in certain locations. Okay? That's the high level, what I think the 136 pages do. So why are we here? As Dan said, we're here to see if you want to send a letter to LCDC in terms of providing testimony. And what do we think the key points should be? So there are, well, my list says 5, but I kind of feel like the first 2 are sort of merged together. Staff actually does think in this case that it would be good if at least some of these rules were implemented through Metro rather than by individual jurisdictions. I know that Metro policies don't always align with the county's priorities. However, we're already subject to Metro requirements. We already have to comply with their regional transportation plan, with land use regulations they have. If we have to do this on our own, it becomes multiple layers, right? The state tells us to do something, we have to do that, but we also have to comply with Metro. And Metro has some technical expertise that we don't have. They have probably more resources, more staffing, more ability to do transportation analysis that we don't have. And so there is some benefit, I think, to us in terms of staff resources if some of this does happen through Metro. So we think the rules should be clarified regarding exactly what Metro's role is and what our role is. Secondly, the parking reform, we would suggest that you testify that the parking reforms are too prescriptive, that they do not recognize differences in local communities, places where transit isn't available, places where we don't have the connected bike and ped system that some jurisdictions have. Thirdly, we would suggest that they need more time. If we're sitting here telling you we don't understand the rules, that's a problem. So this should slow down because this needs to be implementable. We don't just want to create a situation where there's all this bureaucracy and nobody knows how to navigate it. And then fourthly, we need money. Let's be clear, right? This is unfunded. So how are they going to pay for this? How are we going to pay for this? And it's not just us. It is dozens of jurisdictions around the state, many of which are much smaller than we are, right? Every city in the Portland metro area, Salem, Kaiser, Eugene, Medford, Bend, all of it. How do we pay for it? So those are the 4 key things. That was a lot. I think we're at 12 minutes. I'm going to stop talking now.
Good.
And
Thank you.
just open the floor.
I know
Except Dan wants to say
commissioners,
something.
She said it, I didn't, don't look at me.
okay, I know commissioners want to opine on this, as do I. I want to thank staff for coming forward with this extremely difficult proposal, knowing what our philosophy is and goals are on the urbanization of our UGB and expansion. Now, I have real heartburn on this, voting on what we're supposed to do today. This board has taken action through laws that were passed in the last couple legislatures to increase density, okay? We've had hearings, we've had this and this, and we have another law, I think, coming at us to add more housing, middle housing, or we changed some zoning, we did it. So how is this in conflict with what the board action we've already taken? And how is this in conflict with what the Oregon legislature has told us to do? I think there is huge conflicts in this. Secondly, can the Oregon legislature change what LCDC has put through to this if all the jurisdictions bound together and said, this is not understandable, this is not doable? Is that an option? You say eliminate all parking minimums. We have to cap some. That is extremely contrary on a value system that this board has talked about and instructed staff to do. I have a huge amount of heartburn going forward on this. You've asked us to submit a letter. I think the letter needs to indicate some of our concerns about the actions that were already mandated to us by the Oregon legislature. This is one of the most nonsensical things I've heard in my life. Now, I've said what I need to say for now, and I'm sure my commissioners want to opine on this. Commissioner Savas, you're up next.
Yeah, well, I didn't have a chance to look at all the pages, but I certainly read these 5, and that was enough.
Thank you, Paul. If you read them and you can understand them, will you please call me and tell me what it is?
Yeah, when I first came on the commission, there were some land use initiatives taking place in Salem about industrial lands, knowing that we had to grow our economy. We're coming out of that recession that we had, the Great Recession. And I constantly heard from my colleagues and others, oh, the Oregon legislature, they hate to do land use. They shouldn't be doing land use. No, no, no. I mean, I can name the chairs and the colleagues around the table that were saying that and adamant about that. And here we are today with the legislature doing all of these land use things. This is crazy. The part, I almost want to say I'm inclined to walk down there or drive down there and show them a calendar with the map and what year it is, and also a TriMet map to show them, by the way, we ain't got the transit to do this, right? Maybe in a couple areas we have decent transit, but you can't eliminate parking and do all those things and be able to handle, I mean, where are people going to go? How are people going to, they're going to park their car. There's so many examples. It's frustrating to talk about that. There's already examples of that already failing, and that's too bad. We should take a field trip and around some areas in this region where I can show you where the parking situation is failing today. But without transit, and I don't mean just 5 days a week transit, I'm talking 7 days a week. People need to be able to move and travel and commute 7 days a week. Some people don't get Saturday and Sunday off, right? And if they don't get Saturday and Sunday off and there is no transit, they have to drive to go to work. And they have to have a place to park. It is nonsensical in a number of ways. And also the other thing that I think is very short-sighted is as these auto and truck manufacturers are transitioning out and shutting down the internal combustion engine plants and committing to going full electric, that this is short-sighted. The only thing in here that makes sense if people realize that's where we're headed is having the requirement for parking spaces be capable of electric charging. That makes sense in the long term, but this is a train wreck. And this might work for Portland. It might work for areas, not all areas in Portland. It might work for areas maybe in Gresham or around the region, but there's got to be, I'll say these 2 words, there needs to be exceptions and exemptions. Exemptions because the funding, we already heard from TriMet, they don't have the money to expand transit. Not only is it unfunded for us to do all of this, but the transit element, there's no funds to do that. We might see some small incremental things, but the reality is it is not in the horizon. As a result of COVID, we have heard that the ridership is down to historic lows, and they don't see it coming back until 2045. That's the transit people saying that. That the ridership will not come back to where it was pre-COVID until 2045 because people are worried or not safe being in those congested areas on transit, let alone the safety issue. So if that's the case, 2045, I'll guarantee you that you go to buy a new car, you're probably going to buy an electric car.
Sure.
So I think that's what the region is failing to recognize. And by the way, we need the roads and we need the highways for those electric cars. And this climate argument for transportation is going to go down every year. There's more and more. We do need, and I'm a strong believer of this, we do need to accommodate the charging because that is a big part of it. And I don't mean just here. I mean along the interstates, I-97, for example.
There's not, you kind of have to replace the gas stations.
Right, exactly.
Electric infrastructure.
Having charging stations at restaurants that are convenient, so when you pull in off the road, that you can charge your car while you're having lunch or breakfast, or you're going to the store to go shopping, you can charge your car. Those are the practical elements. But we need to fight this. We do need to send a letter. I'm happy to testify if I need to, but exceptions and exemptions for areas that this region did not fund. They didn't fund transit in Clackamas County. They chose not to. They didn't fund a lot of things. I said enough.
Yeah, Paul, I'm in agreement with you on that too, with the objections I brought up. So I'm laughing at your presentation. You have a picture here? Dan, whose sense of humor? Fair parking. I find that sign hysterical. Whoever did that, your humor is not lost on me. Thank you very much for that. Commissioners, Martha, do you have?
Send a letter.
Send a letter.
Yeah, question.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
So I'm just curious where, like, League of Oregon Cities is, what are other statewide organizations, and what are they doing with all of this?
So the League of Oregon Cities and AOC have been very much involved, and they themselves are working to send a letter, and it reflects many of the same kind of concerns. They're concerned about the speed at which this is moving forward. They're concerned about the feasibility of some of these, feasibility and applicability of making these measures, and how the different jurisdictions will be able to impact and influence these things, and implement them, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, so I guess my suggestion would be the greater the voice, the more collaboration on points, the stronger we will be. So sticking to the main talking points will allow us to be most effective in our advocacy. But it's up to us to communicate. It's important that we let the state know how what they're doing will affect us.
Okay, so I think you heard from our commissioners, and the letter needs to include exemptions, exceptions,
AOC.
conflicts with current state law. By the way, that we've already implemented because we were told we had to do these mandates. And costs, these are all unfunded. We have no money to do this. Commissioners, anything else you want to see in the letter? And they're going to bring it back.
Sure.
And there's a recommendation here, Gary. Do we need to have a motion for this?
Did you submit a draft letter in your packet?
There is a recommendation of, I'm going to read the direct staff to develop written testimony to LCDC for submittal as part of the public hearing process for CFEC rules adoption, explaining our board concerns identified during this policy session and advocating for needed changes to the rules to address those concerns. Staff will return to the board during issues with a draft of the testimony for board approval.
Move for option one.
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion that Paul Savas has moved for option one, and Commissioner Schrader has seconded that.
What's her face?
You have your hand up.
Yeah, just something else to add. I mean, we do care about climate. Obviously, we're engaged in developing a very Clackamas-centric climate action plan with a lot of community engagement. So just mentioning that, I think might also be good.
I think that's a good point. Very good point, Commissioner Scholl.
The other thing to remember, that anything that happens in the metro urban growth boundary affects our people from Canby, Malala, Estacada, Sandy, because they all come in to that area to do business. Please don't forget that.
That's right. And your point is, Commissioner Scholl,
And-
it's just not within the urban growth boundary that the effects of this have. It's the entire county and our rural areas as well.
Exactly, and people, when they need to come in to do business within the metro urban growth boundary, they're going to come in from Estacada, for example, with their car, and what we do with parking is going to affect everybody.
Paul, your card is up?
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, it's overall, just an overall comment. It's unfortunate, really, and I've seen this my entire career, that whether it's at the state level or whether it's at the federal level, that there's always these feel-good kind of policies that come out, and they're not well-informed, and sometimes are perceived as misguided. And I've been in the industry for a long time, in air quality, emissions, and all that, and I always banked my confidence in cleaner emissions in the technology. And the technology is going to solve these problems. It's not going to be politicians. And I'm just going to say that if politicians want to do something, then they ought to look at the technology and look what's coming and accommodate it. And that accommodation is in electrification or charging, that accommodation would be in capacity, all those things that it needs to take because the future is going to be, is what it is, that's how it's gonna get solved. And this argument's gonna dissipate every day that goes by, as more electric cars are produced.
The other thing is they're going to have to figure out how to dispose of batteries and the toxic nature of batteries.
Dan, you have your hand up.
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay.
Dan, when does this letter have to be submitted?
So there is the opportunity, thank you, Chair, for calling on me. There is the opportunity to provide public testimony or written testimony between now and the first hearing in March, okay? For it to be in the packet of information that actually goes out, it needs to be submitted as soon as possible.
Okay.
So that would mean probably end of the week. That doesn't mean it doesn't get submitted. It would get submitted, but if we want it in the formal packet, that's
Yeah.
what needs to happen. We
So-
can bring it back to you Tuesday, we can bring it back to you.
Well, I'm just
Tuesday.
reading what you said. Okay, so write the letter and bring it.
Can you bring it tomorrow to the business meeting? Can you write it today, and the board can review it tomorrow and approve it?
Yes.
Okay?
You probably already knew what we were thinking. So
We had a pretty
I
good
bet you
idea.
somebody
Yeah,
might have a draft.
We knew you were going to love this topic.
I
We
know,
totally
yes.
understood that, yeah.
Yes. So is it something that the chair just signs? Or on behalf of the Board of Commissioners? Or does all commissioners want to sign this? What's the procedure? Gary?
So the procedure is you get to decide if this is powerful enough that you want all your signatures on it, that would be great. I do advise that you all look at the letter because I think you all want to see it, and we can do it as fast as tomorrow at your business meeting to have you review it and approve it, if staff can get it done today.
Yeah, it needs to be a strong letter, and I think it needs to highlight the fact that we're not Portland, and we don't have the assets, the transportation assets to make this work like Portland does, and that's
Yeah,
not our
and-
fault.
The whole tolling conversation is just one more example of the state
And
imposing
then
stuff
this
on
is
us.
probably in conflict with tolling. I mean, I think this is in conflict with everything that's happening right now. Anyway, I'm done. Are we all done, ready for a vote? Shannon, can you take the poll, please?
Yes, Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Staff, thank you for your work on this. It's just, I think, an impossible task for you to do, but you have tackled it with a very good attitude.
Another day in the life.
Yes.
I love these topics. These are so much fun coming.
So we'll have, if possible, a draft no later by like 6 o'clock today. We'll post it online. It'll be at tomorrow's business meeting. We'll do it under my administrator update, and you could review it and approve it.
We'll be here if there's questions.
Done.
Okay, we're going to go ahead with Commissioner Communications, because I'm going to start with you, Paul, because,
Oh, okay.
yeah, we're done.
We don't, that was yesterday, so we don't need to do that
Oh, I'm
today.
sorry. I'm a day off. I beg your
You're
pardon.
done for the day, Commissioner.
Oh, so we're done for the day.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for your hard work on this.